Good morning. This is Kathy L. Murphy, and I'm actually reporting from North Dallas, Texas this morning as I'm at my daughter's, and we're here for our Writers Club meeting for the International Pulpit Queens and Timber Guys Book Club. We meet once a month, the second Saturday, and I am thrilled to have a very old and dear friend, author Carolyn Haines, who has had over 80 books published and who I first learned about when I was a lowly bookseller. And I remember reading a book called Touched. I mean, that takes us back, doesn't it, Carolyn Haines? So we have Mandy Haines, the executive director, here with me today. We're having a little internet issues. So if I bop off, it's because something's going on here in Dallas. But right now, I'm going to turn the program over to Carolyn because she has been teaching writing for some time. And this is a real coup for us to have somebody of this caliber do a writer's workshop for all of you today. So big applause for Carolyn Haines. Take it away, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. Teaching writing is kind of a really strange thing. And I'm kind of a seat of the pants kind of teacher. I always taught things that I wished somebody had taught to me when I was working for the University of South Alabama. And I had quite a few students who went on to get publishing contracts, because you have to learn to develop that left brain stuff to go along with the right brain stuff, the creative stuff, to structure a really good book. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, what are we talking about?
Genres.
I'm teasing.
I know.
I want to talk about how different genres have different elements. Now, I want you to really understand that these are things that I've made up myself. This is not any acquired knowledge. This is just from years of experience, loads of rejections, and selling a lot of books. So when we start to think about genre, okay, if you have, what are the four elements of a novel? Plot, setting, character, and theme. We all learn this in grammar school or high school when we're studying literature. Those are the four elements. And for what's considered to be a novel, they're kind of equal. They're equally braided into the fabric. Each one has about the same amount of weight in a book. And this used to be the old category of general fiction. But as times changed and as the large big box booksellers came into being, then genre fiction became very important because they could put it in a section and readers could go straight there and find what they were looking for. The old model of the bookstore where you knew the people who ran it, and you could go in and they would go, oh, Carolyn, she loves horses and mysteries, and they would have 5 or 6 books under the counter that they had put there for me when I would come in to buy, because they knew what I liked. But those days are kind of gone. Hopefully they're coming back as more indie booksellers are reopening and finding ways to keep their business viable. But for a while, it was kind of a tough scene for indie booksellers. So the big box stores began the sectioning of genre: sci-fi, romance, mystery, and then they would have general fiction, which used to be everything in the older bookstores that I grew up shopping in, and you would shop by author, or the bookseller would tell you, oh, we had this new wonderful book. It's a mystery and it's about horses. Because that's all I really ever wanted to read about was horses. I was that kid, that was horse crazy. So when I started teaching classes at the University of South Alabama, I was director of fiction, and I ran the graduate and undergraduate programs. So I kind of had to figure out things and ways to teach because the model that I had been taught was an older literary model that just didn't serve my students as well as I wanted it to. So with the advent of the different sections in the bookstore, I made up, and it is made up, some ideas about how to craft fiction. And part of it is that you take the formula of the four equally important: plot, setting, character, and theme, all equally important in a novel. And one becomes more important. Like if you're writing romance, of those elements, plot, setting, character, and theme, what is the most important element? If you're writing a romance, it's character. You have to have two intensely compelling characters because your plot is pretty similar and your theme is always love prevails. So where you have your work to do is in the creation of the characters and building these wonderful, unforgettable characters. So, but if you want to look at a book like Gone with the Wind, which is technically a romance, you also have the addition of historical aspects, and you have a pretty good plot. I mean, it's not just boy meets girl, conflict, they split apart, they get back together, conflict, they get back together, which is kind of the basic plot of a lot of the smaller romances, not the broader historical or sweeping romances. So I tried to kind of formulate my own way of looking at genre fiction. And in learning this, or in thinking about it, I also came to believe that all fiction is genre fiction, because let's look at some different categories and talk about. Now, Mandy, you and Kathy, answer me if you want to, because like if you're talking about horror, what do you think is the most important element of horror?
For me, it's the anticipation of something horrible going to happen. You know, it's you know, the edge of your seat. You know, the buildup of what's going to happen.
And it generally relies on setting.
Yes.
The haunted house, you know, the camp out in the woods where you're all alone. So setting becomes more important in genre fiction for horror than some character. You know, a lot of horror, and I love horror. It's one of my very favorite genres, so I'm not dissing it. But you know, it's the stupid teenager in the woods.
Don't open that door.
Yeah, it's kind of a stock thing, you know. And there is that terrific commercial, you know, where they're playing on that, and the kids are out in the woods and they run into the shed where the chainsaws are hanging.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
The guy with the mask is going to get them, and they're like, "I think we're safe here," you know. So setting is really, really important in horror, and a well done genre book keeps the equal balance of plot, setting, character, and theme. And you have a more interesting theme than just the monster's going to get you.
Right.
You have something environmental, perhaps, or historical, something that comes from a past sin or whatever, that makes it more interesting. So the more you can complicate those basic elements in genre fiction and yet stay true to kind of the parameters, your job is to scare people, to make people uncomfortable, to open the door to the possibilities of the dark underside. And that's what you're doing with horror. So let's look at, we talked about romance, and romance is love prevails. That is the most important thing in a romance, is that while you suffer with the characters through all kinds of hardships, in the conclusion, love prevails, which takes me back to my case of Gone with the Wind, that it is not a romance. It is not. There is no happy ending. And without a happy ending, it's not really a romance, is it? I mean, if you start thinking about how these genres are defined and why the readers who read them are drawn to them, then it really makes writing very, very fascinating, because you see the psychology of how certain types of stories attract readers. And if you look at things like fairy tales,
Oh, yeah.
this long, long history of fascination with stories like Cinderella and Snow White. And you have all the classic elements, the Wicked Witch, the challenge, all of these things. So let's look at another genre of fiction, the thriller. What's the most important element in a thriller? Is it character, plot, setting, or theme?
Would it be plot?
Plot, absolutely plot, absolutely. And often one of the biggest complaints that I hear about thrillers is that it's a terrific ride, and you get your blood pumping and you're all into what's going to happen next. But characterization is sometimes very weak. You don't have fully rounded characters. You have the macho man or the macho woman who's going to prevail over whatever obstacle is in their path. So if you want to write a thriller and you want to write a better thriller than the average thriller, take care with your characters also. And some sub themes, not just that the strong prevails or the smart prevails or whatever, but have some complications in there. And that's why certain types of thrillers are more attractive to me, like environmental thrillers, is because I'm very concerned about the environment. Yeah. And I really enjoy reading a book where I know the good guys are going to prevail and they're going to protect the environment or do whatever they need to do to keep it from being destroyed. I read a lot of different kind of books. Me too. Now, I grew up on Nancy Drew and the Black Stallion books. So I'm like a huge lover of mystery and of all kinds of things. But I think it's really smart as a writer to start to try to understand why certain types of fiction work and others work differently. There's no right or wrong. It's all what you like and what you're interested in and what appeals to you. So let's look at science fiction. What would you say is the most important element in science fiction? Plot, setting, character, or theme?
That's hard.
It's so
setting or theme?
I would say theme.
Yes, I would say setting first of all, because really sci-fi is set in an alternate universe, and the writer has to create a believable universe for the readers to hook into what's happening there. If it's just like it's a green planet and it's not far from Mars, it's really hard. It's really hard to invest. There's a lot of world building in science fiction and a lot of taking human characteristics and blending them with non-human characteristics in the characterization. So often, if you think about I'm trying to think of the TV show.
I'm thinking Avatar.
Yeah, and Star Trek, with Data, who's the computer kind of guy, but he has human qualities so that you can relate to him. There's a lot of work that goes into creating a character that is not human, but that can compel a human audience to care what happens to them.
Vulcans.
Oh,
Vulcans,
yeah.
Dr. Spock.
Spock. I love that. Yeah, I grew up on the original Star Trek. That's how old I am. But it was, you know, like the best thing happening Thursday night in the big city of Bluesdale. So, but those shows, interestingly enough for me, those shows taught so many also moral lessons. The Star Trek shows, you know, an awareness of an appreciation for difference, and the courage to look into new and different things. That growing up in a small town, you know, a lot of people never really wanted to go beyond the city limits.
That's
They
right.
were happy and comfortable where they were. And I can remember when I graduated from college and left for Europe. And my poor mother told people in town that I was backpacking through Europe. Oh my God, I thought they were going to have an exorcism for me and her. It just wasn't done by nice girls. You know? So that was kind of fun. So I think, you know, when we start looking at sci-fi and these genres, you have to kind of calculate what it is in these different areas that appeal to so many people. And it's so interesting in my little brain, you know, I find that romance is most often written by women and hard science fiction by guys. But there is an in the middle place where a lot of women thrive as science fiction writers who focus on relationship a lot. And Star Trek for me was very, very heavy on relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, those characters were family and the bonds that they created. So you can break it all down into these tidy little components of sci-fi is very important with setting, horror, I mean, the world building and horror's setting. But with horror, if you don't have a great character that the reader can buy into, then you're not going to develop that true readership that cares about what happens to the people you create. If they're just cannon fodder for the monster to kill, then it's not very interesting to me. Not to, you know, different readers like different things, but we're looking at genre here and what makes genre work and how important it is to kind of think about these things when you start writing your stories so that you know, okay, if I have a romance and there are murders in it, how far have I moved from my audience who wants to read about emotion, who wants to read about happily ever after? Maybe you shouldn't sell it as a romance. Maybe you should not approach agents who only represent romance. Maybe you need to start rethinking the parameters of the story you're telling. Now, first, let me say, I absolutely wholeheartedly believe in the gift of the story. I believe that writers are given an idea. It is a grace of God kind of thing. It's not, you know, that we thought it up or that we're such geniuses. It's a gift. And your job as a writer, your only job is to honor that gift and tell that story to the best of your ability. And so, you know, when you start playing around with ideas, that doesn't mean you can't change your original idea, that it's, you know, it's the gift, you have to do the gift. No, you have to look at it and understand what the gift really is. And it's your job to kind of unwrap it and peel back and see how it fits into the canon of literature and really where you want to go with it. I love genre fiction. Some people only want to read literary fiction. Well, the bad news is that literary is just another genre. So if you start really looking at it, then you, well, the way, and it's a trick question, so I'm not going to ask you guys because it's not fair to ask you something I've made up, and it's a trick. So when I look at literary fiction, or what used to be called general fiction in the good old days, I see this incredibly beautiful tapestry. And let's say plot, character, theme, and setting are red, yellow, blue, and green. And they're woven equally in this beautiful balance. It's a dance of how the author manages these elements of telling a story. But there is a fifth element in literary fiction. Let's put us a little orange piece that weaves in and out, in and out. It's called style, individual writer style. Your very best genre fiction, you can tell who writes it. You can tell that there is a style at work, and there should be, but it should not be obvious. You really want to be the storyteller without any fanfare, flares, or calling attention to yourself. In literary fiction, you really want a distinctive style that everybody can read the first page, like James Lee Burke. I can read 3 sentences and tell you it's a James Lee Burke novel. And I think he is probably the finest working writer alive today. I admire him. I admire him intensely.
Me too. I'm a huge fan.
It's not vodka, it's only water. But I think, and literary fiction has a different purpose than just, and I don't want to say just storytelling, because I think every book should be more ambitious than just telling a story. Although that is one of the highest achievements any writer can make, is just to tell a story. But in literary fiction, you're exploring issues also. You have to be kind of subtle with it. You can't like hammer the reader over the head with it. I know in the latest Sarah Booth book, Independent Bones, they are classified as cozy mysteries, though when they were originally sold, they were sold as Southern mysteries. But that was back in the dark ages. But I got a really interesting review from this woman who was furious that I had included in the book a hard look at equality of women. And it really got under her skin. She's very mad about it. I mean, not just a little bit mad, but a whole lot mad.
Wrote you about it. Wow.
And it's so interesting to me to see people's reactions to things. It's the same Sarah Booth's kind of story, it's exact, but it did deal with the role of women and what it means to be an independent woman. And apparently I got under her skin in a big time kind of way. It's all just so fascinating to me to see how people react to things, because when I read or when I watch a television show, I'm happy for the author or the writer or the producer or director to have a political agenda. I get a kick out of it, but a lot of people don't. So that's,
Carolyn, I've always felt that people that write to somebody about something, it has nothing to do with the author or the person telling the story. It's really telling you more about the person who's writing it, because everybody brings their own experiences into the read. Evidently, there was something in your writing that made her uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kathy. Absolutely. And it's fun. That's, as my friends used to tell me, because I'm very hard-headed, That's why they make chocolate and vanilla, because people have different tastes.
That also explains why I always get the swirl.
But I think for writers and readers, I think it's really important to think about the elements of any story you're telling and how they're weighted. Because in a romance, character is always more important than plot. Characters are more important than setting. And almost every romance has the same theme. Love prevails. In the end, the characters find each other and they share love. And that's really important. I am not minimizing it or making it less than. It's very, very important because it is one of the things that the human animal wants more than anything else is connection. A connection that is valid, important. And that's what a romance.
Why do you think, Carolyn, people knock the romance genre as not being as important as any other genre?
Because it's written by women for women, and women are inferior creatures, as you know very well. That's a huge part of it. And also, and there are a good bit of romantic material that's published that isn't very well done.
Right.
It really isn't. And it opens the door for that kind of criticism. But your very best, and of course now I can't think of any names, but you know, I wrote 37 Harlequin intrigues. And a lot of them were about Familiar, the black cat detective, who is my new black cat, Trouble. Familiar was his daddy. So I learned to manage plot, character setting, and theme when I started writing the Harlequin intrigues. I also learned the balance of immediate scene and narrative summary. I learned how to set up a plot in the middle of a scene in the middle of the action, and and go through to the end, so you don't have those first 4 or 5 pages of setting up the scene to slow your book down, which is really important if you're working in particular genres. I'll never forget the first book that I sold. I had met this editor, Toddy Carter, and I owe my writing career to her. She was one of the top editors at Intrigue, which was a Harlequin. Most of Harlequin was published in Toronto. Their publishing offices were there, but the Intrigue offices were in New York City. Still are, as a matter of fact. And Toddy and some other editors were in Mobile doing a presentation about Harlequin, and I attended, and I talked to her. I really, really liked her. She was terrifying. She was so smart. She's absolutely terrifying, and she was beautiful on top of that, which made it even worse, And I'm this little green writer, and I had only written short stories. I had gotten an agent off of short stories, and the agent told me, she said, "You got to write a novel," and I'm like, well. In the intervening time from that until I started writing the novel, I had a real setback in fortune and was about to starve to death. And so that's when I decided I would try to write for Harlequin. So I wrote this book, and it was called Magnolia Point. I remember it's about the horse racing industry. I had covered the Mississippi legislature as a reporter. And one of the things that, one of the bills that they had up at the time was a horse racing bill. So I thought I would take this practical experience and apply it to a mystery, a romantic mystery, which I thought would be a lot of fun, because I could, Jackson, Mississippi is a little bit of an exotic setting for a lot of romance readers who don't really consider Mississippi Romancal. Anyway, so I started the book out, you know, and my character is walking up the Capitol steps, state Capitol steps, getting ready to go to a committee hearing on this bill. And she's thinking about the horse racing bill, thinking about it. And she gets in, and there are like 12 pages of her thinking about this bill and what it's going to mean to Mississippi and this kind of stuff. So I wrote this whole book, like 325 pages, and I sent it to Toddy, and she sent it back, and she said, "You need to start the book with action." And I'm like, she's walking up the Capitol steps, you know? I just about died. So I rewrote it. So, okay, I got this figured out. I'm smart. So the female protagonist is in the front yard of a house that she's just bought. And she's pulling up the for sale sign because she's going to stick it out in Mississippi and be a newspaper reporter and cover these Yahoo politicians. Well, and she's thinking about the horse racing bill and how it was like, so by then I had a critique group. So I turned it into my critique group, and they just were like, "Carolyn, she's thinking, it's not action. She's thinking, it's not action." And I'm like, well, damn, you know, how am I going to get around to what the story's about if she can't think about it, you know? It occurred to me, it was like the eureka moment. So I started the book off at a cocktail party. She's eavesdropping on this corrupt politician. I finally figured it out. I finally got a glimpse and understanding of this very, very important lesson in writing. Start with action. Start with whatever you're writing. Start with action. And you can layer it with beautiful language and internal thought if you're writing more literary stuff. But if you're writing more genre stuff, you just kind of slide all that stuff out, get with the action, and get into immediate character development. So where would a newspaper reporter hide to eavesdrop on a cocktail party full of politicians?
Behind a newspaper.
As one of the waitresses, right?
Brilliant.
There you go. So, I mean, it's all, to me, writing is like a puzzle, and it excites me immensely. I know I sound like such a dork. I know I do.
Not at all.
No, it's great.
It's so exciting to kind of try to understand what these different genres want to accomplish, how you can lend yourself to them, or how you can take the same idea and go in 40 different directions. And you're telling the same story. You're just using a different set of skills to tell it. And these are skills that can be learned. This is one of the things that I found out about teaching. Everybody has a story, and everybody can tell it if they're willing to do the hard work to figure out how to do it. I got to tell you, any sane person getting the number of rejections I got would have quit long before I did. But the only skill set I really had was writing. I couldn't do books. Oh my God, don't ever give me math. I can't even add a column of numbers. Don't give me math. I'm not good with people. I'm not service oriented. I'm a really snarly old thing. And I love animals, but they don't have any money. So.
Oh, well, we're right there with you, aren't we, Mandy?
Yeah. Now you've published over, how many books have you published, Carolyn? After that, like, okay, all the rejections you got, but now looking back, how many books have you published?
Over 80. But I mean, I've published in romantic mystery, horror, gothic, straight traditional mystery, crime novels, Lord, cozy mystery. If you want to count Sarah Booth as cozy, I just count her as mystery, but she's sold in the cozy genre.
I just learned what cozy mystery was. I did not know what that meant. Can you explain to the audience that genre? It's relatively been around for not that long. What is a cozy mystery?
Okay. Let's look at mystery and the 4 elements.
Okay.
Of the 4 elements, plot, setting, character, theme, which one is most important in traditional mystery?
Plot.
Plot. Yeah, plot. You're right, gal. That's exactly it. But with cozy, it's more of a combination of plot and character.
Okay.
Because they buy into these, they want a series. They don't want one book. I mean, I'm writing the 24th Sarah Booth book right now.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And I'm telling you.
You're like the Nancy Drew of today.
These people who write me tell me, and this is the most flattering thing anyone can say, Sarah Booth is like my family.
Aw.
I wait every year for her to visit.
Oh my gosh.
And that means everything to me. I've spent more time with Sarah Booth and the Zinnia people than I have with anyone in my life. Kicked out a few husbands to make room for more Zinnia, you know.
You've talked about all these genres, but I'm very interested. You know, Southern Gothic is like my thing.
I love
One of my favorite crazy books that of course, Crazy in Alabama by Mark Childress, and then Big Fish by Daniel Wallace. Those are, I think I was there when both of them were maybe speaking. You know, how does that fit in the 4, you know, aspects of writing, the Southern Gothic? Where do you think it's where do you think the emphasis is?
Like, what makes Southern Gothic?
Yeah, what makes
What makes Southern Gothic?
Okay, think about it. It's character and setting.
Yeah.
It's character and setting. So, I mean, there's no reason you can't blend. And you take a book like Crazy in Alabama, which has a tad of horror with that damn head in the Tupperware, you know, driving around California.
Talking to
I feel like I was
his
reading my
wife.
childhood. I swear to God. I've told Mark this a million times, but
It's one of my very favorite books.
It's one of my very favorites too.
and I just, you know, my mother drove a big pink Cadillac and dressed just like the character in the book. I don't think she had the head in the Tupperware, but pretty close. No, I'm joking.
No,
so,
but I mean, that's a wonderful example of how you can take the equal 4, and Mark pumped up the characters a little bit, you know, and he added some flourishes, a little bit of gothic, a little bit of mystery, you know. You know how it's like cooking gumbo. You
right.
put a lot of stuff in it and it makes it only better, you know, the blend of flavors. But you have to kind of know that if you're writing a cozy mystery, you're not going to have a scene where a child is raped. You're just not. The readers would, I mean, it would be like Frankenstein. They would be in the yard with torches, pitchforks, ready to get out.
Have you read Grady Hendrix's book, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying?
I haven't read it, but I know.
Oh my God, you've got to read that book because it breaks all genres as far as, I don't even know where you put this book. I mean, it's so out there, but I enjoyed it immensely. So anyway, I'm just, those are the kind of books I try to, you know, I know your theme is genre, but I like to read the books that don't fit in a box. You know, the books that
Kathy,
that has not been told before in an aspect. Like when I read Touched, I was just like, and you can explain a little bit about that book, but that book was so different from anything I'd ever read before, you know?
Yes, I do. And it's, you know, it's the second book that I ever wrote, full-length book, novel.
What was the first one? What was the first novel?
Summer of the Redeemers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm getting ready to bring all of those back.
Yay! We'll have to put them on our book reading list because they're really great. You know, it doesn't matter when a book is published. A good story is a good story is a good story. So let me know when those come back because that would be great.
It's been it's crazy because bringing back a book, which sounds like it should be so easy, there were so many typos in Summer of the Redeemers. I mean, we had it scanned.
Yep, that's where it happens.
Yeah, and we have driven ourselves mad reading this, looking for typos and stuff. It was like R-U-N, the U and the N would come together and it looked like rum.
Yeah, so it's the typesetting. So that's when I did my first walking, because I did all that myself. I didn't have the right software. I drove myself nuts. There are 300 copies of Walking out there with so embarrassed, like crap like that. Because I made enough money on the pre-orders that I could buy the right software that I put a second edition out. But it's like, you know, it's not.
Well, that's why Mandy is working on doing a 4th edition of my book because it was so clean when we went to have it published, but something happened.
And that transfer.
There's so many mistakes in this 3rd edition. I just, you know, here I'm supposed to be the queen of literacy and Mandy's going, you got to get this fixed.
You know, I got to tell you, there are things that I'm not good. If you hired me to paint a room, you would put me on the walls. You would not put me on the trim work. I am not a detail person. I'm a broad stroke, but I can paint the hell out of walls. Sorry.
That's all right.
Heck out of walls, but something tedious, I don't have the patience for it. And that's like looking for typos. You know, it's hard to find those things, especially in your own writing, because you know
what it is. You see, and so your brain just. So I did. River Jordan is coming out with a collection of short stories, fiction. She hadn't written fiction in a long time. I'm so excited. These stories are great, and I'm doing that typeset and formatting for her, and I'm kind of like being a little book coach, like keeping her going because it's a lot. You know, it's hard and blah. So I'm like, oh, River, you know, we're this much closer, and I'll tell her, you know, we're a little bit closer. I was all finished. I sent her the PDF of the layouts with the page numbers and the table of contents and her you know, it's like, you've got a book. And then as soon as I hit send, I was like, those italics, I didn't, they don't transfer. And I have to go through, but I said, yeah.
They do really strange things. I know.
It's so frustrating.
Well, I told her, I said, bad news is I had to go over every page again. Good news is I had to go over every page again. So we know, you know, that it's almost perfect.
Mandy's good at this.
Yeah.
She's really good.
There are people who have the tenacity and personality. And I'm just like, throw it out in the yard and set it on fire. I had a Vegematic. Now wait, I broke my wrist loading a horse in a trailer. So I had a cast on, and it was my left hand, which I needed very much because I'm left-handed. So I was supposed to go to a party and bring coleslaw. So I was going to chop up the onion with my little Vegematic that you could, you know, punch, but something was wrong with the blades, and all it did was smush the onion, and it wouldn't cut it clean. And I threw that thing across the room, and it came out and sliced the linoleum floor.
Oh.
I picked it up. I never lost my temper. I never got mad. I picked it up. I took it outside and put it on the cement apron of the pool. and I walked down to the barn and I got a sledgehammer and I came back up and I beat it to death. And I have never been happier to kill an appliance than then.
So much for the coleslaw.
I love it.
It was- I'm telling you, I have a terrible temper, but it is a calculated temper.
Well, that's good for writing all these murder, mystery, thriller, crime. So,
I want to make one more little point about genre because I know our time is running out, and why it's important to know what genre you're writing in and the different elements that you're adding into it. And it has to do with getting an agent or selling a book, because you need to be able to describe what you're writing to see if it interests other people. So if you know the genre you're writing in, then you can kind of stay within that focus. And when you get established, then you have freedom to begin to add in new, more powerful, bigger things.
You got to get your foot in there. You got to get your foot in the door.
Well, because when they publish a book, when a publisher takes on a client to publish, they have money at risk. They do. They're paying editors. They're paying all kinds of people. There is money at risk. So if you're easy to market, if the book rep from the publisher can say, oh, it's a cozy mystery, it's set in the Mississippi Delta, the characters are, whatever, then that makes the bookseller can go, do I have readers who would like that or not? And the other thing is how this all came to be so crazy with the labels. Back when I was, reading general fiction, everything was general fiction in the 60s and 70s, everything. You went in a bookstore and it's the Dewey Decimal System, alphabetical. So you would rely on the bookseller to recommend books to you, and I would go in the haunted bookshop here in Mobile. My mother would drive me over here and I would go in and the two ladies who owned the bookstore would have my books under the counter. Horses, mysteries, scary stories. They knew what I liked.
that's right.
They would already have them under the counter for me, and I would just hand over my allowance and take my books and go home to read as happy as a pig in mud. But now, when the big box stores came into being,
Right.
there are a lot of there's a lot of feelings about this great change in the publishing world, but often they hired clerks who were not readers.
Absolutely.
Minimum wage people who wanted a job, and a bookstore is a very cool place to work.
Absolutely.
There's not a bad thing about it.
No.
You're surrounded by nice people. Often they have a coffee shop. It's all good, but they were not readers. And this is all stuff I've made. There is no clue that this is the reality, but it's just my observations and what I believe is that this is when they started labeling mystery, crime, general fiction, romance, sci-fi, fantasy, because these little clerks who did not read would not know where to shelve the books if there were not categories. Does this make sense to y'all? It does make sense. doesn't
In
it?
a bookstore.
Absolutely.
And it's exactly I think you get at it right on hit the nail on the head.
Sometimes I
give you
think
a
I've lost
great
my
example
mind.
of going into a big box chain looking for Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I said, do you have that book? And they go, who's it by? I'm going, it's like number in the top 4 New York Times. And I go, John Barrett, how do you spell it? And I go, what kind of book is it? And I'm going, unbelievable. I would think that if you worked in a bookstore, you should know what the top selling books are in the country.
And many of the big box employees do.
Yes, they
But
do.
a lot of them don't. A
No.
lot of them don't. And I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret about this business.
Yeah.
They don't know where to put you on the shelf. They just don't unbox your books. They just return them the next month.
It's, you know where they put my book? My book is a memoir. And I was next to Dr. Phil on the self-help because it said Guide to Life.
Yep. 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 And so it's very, very important to understand what label you're putting on the back of your book.
I didn't have a choice. I didn't have.
No, you had a traditional publisher, and I don't either. That's why the Sarah Booth books they're sold as cozies, but to me they're just Southern stories. You know, they are a mystery, and I'm very proud of how hard I have worked to learn to use plot. Plot is not a natural talent for me.
And we're recording this and we're going to be putting it up on our channel. And for the listening audience, you need to know that Carolyn Haines has won the Harper Lee Award. And if you don't know who Harper Lee is, then you need to look it up, because this is my all-time favorite book of all time, was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Absolutely. And anybody who wins this award is almost always a public queen author, because that's just a given for me. But please explain what happened to you when you won that award and the backstory, because not very many people get to meet Harper Lee, or, you know, she's gone now, but I think everybody needs to hear your story.
You know, I did not meet her.
I know.
She was in the nursing home, but she sent me a signed copy of the book, which I treasure.
Oh,
you know.
Amazing. It's amazing. But weren't you there at the same time as Mark Childress?
No, they only have one winner per year.
But did he come, or maybe I'm forgetting?
Mark was there for the ceremony.
Yeah, I thought so. And how exciting is that? Because you guys are big friends, and you're two of my favorite authors. But everybody needs to look up that award and see who all the authors are. But it's, to me, it's the biggest honor.
It is a wonderful honor. It really is. And I have been fortunate, you know, I won the Richard Wright Award for literary excellence from Mississippi. So
that's big too. Wow.
Nice to be honored by because you know what they say, a prophet in his own land is never honored. This is a really incredibly nice that both Mississippi and Alabama have acknowledged my writing.
well, especially when you started out the talk and you were talking about how many rejection letters that you got. That's so inspiring for people that even like, I'm fairly new. I mean, my first book came out 2 years ago, I guess. So, I mean, I'm new. I mean, my second one came out in COVID. I've never really, gotten to do much with that one, but yeah, so it's like, I'm not young though, I'm old. So I'd say young writers, but
you're young. You're young, way young.
Inspiring.
Well, thank you. But it is, desperation is the mother of invention. It really is. That is a true saying. I had no marketable skills other than writing. And as one of my ex-husbands told me, he said, "You're a hell of a liar."
That's what writers are.
And he meant it as a compliment. It was not a dig. It was not a dig. So yes, to tell a good story, you have to be a good liar.
Yeah.
So, but I did want to point out why in marketing, why it's important to be able to identify your genre. When you write that query letter to an agent or an editor, depending on what route you're taking, you want to be able to say, I have a 90,000 word cozy mystery manuscript in the tradition of Carolyn Hart or Rita Mae Brown or whoever it is you want to, that you think your writing is similar to, that you're telling a similar kind of story.
Right.
Yeah, that the readers that like that author would possibly like yours. Not that
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Because this is the shorthand that an agent can calculate and go right through her files and say, oh, I had lunch with so-and-so and so-and-so at Ballantine yesterday, and they're looking for this kind of book. So,
Well, that's exciting because I'm working on my novel.
all right.
And I have no idea what to do once I've
Some action, Mandy.
do
Start
what?
with action. Start each scene with action.
Yeah, right. You know, I'm thinking, like it does
No,
start. The little
don't
girl
think
is
about it.
thinking as she's
Don't
walking.
think about it. You have to write the action.
Right.
But of course, if you're doing a different kind of story than a mystery, perhaps you want to start internally. You know, you think of the very best line that you can hook that reader with.
Well,
That may be-
you've given us so much. You've given us so much
Absolutely.
good information and stuff to really think about. Like I never looked at it like that. Now, you know, and then it's like when you were talking, it's like, oh, I just felt like a little weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like, this is going to be so helpful. So I can't,
That
I hope all
is-
of our
I learned
writers
more.
watch this.
I learned more teaching my students because those kids, they take no prisoners. They want to be successful, and they are paying money to sit in my classroom. And by God, I better come up with the goods to help them get over the next hurdle to where they want to go. And I took it very, very seriously. And I did a lot of research and study, call people, talk to people, you know, and developed my own little idea. Because I had I had a not so great writing teacher who didn't want to read anything that the students wrote, and who just really didn't want to do that, you know.
Oh, that's so sad.
And I was-
But I mean, look though, it worked out. I mean, because it made
This
you
has
the
been
teacher that you are. So
It did.
you said some of your students went on to be published. Is there any of the writers that we might know that were your students?
Probably not in. Well, no, Kathy, who we just lost,
I
knows
think she's
Rebecca
still
Barrett.
there.
Yeah,
Just
and Susan Tanner, who was published. She was a historical romance writer, and now she's writing cat books for me, for Calliope. And Clara Maturo, who's also one of the cat writers, who did a series of mysteries in the 90s for, I think, one of the big houses. I can't remember which, but she was an indie book pick.
so they're
so-
Pulpwood Queens. They're Pulpwood Queens. And
Yeah.
who was the first person that you said before? Did you say somebody before Susan Tanner?
Rebecca Barrett.
Rebecca Barrett. Rebecca Barrett. Do I know?
Kathy
I'm gonna have
knows.
to-
Yeah. Rebecca is she's also one of my former students. So I had a number of students who did go on to publish and are publishing now. Some in some crazy genres.
Oh, I love it.
So, but it is important to know what you're writing. Color on your first book, color within the lines, because these genres make it easier for an agent to sell your book if you color within the lines. But now, you know, now I can do a lot of diverse things with Sarah Booth that I wouldn't have tried in the beginning. Although in the beginning, I didn't know I was writing a mystery. I just thought I was writing a Southern book. But we sold it at auction, and Random House bought it, and they wanted 3 more books. They wanted mysteries. So I'm like,
Wow.
okay, I didn't think I could plot, but I guess I'm going to learn.
We've learned a
Well
lot,
done.
haven't we?
We really have. It's been a journey, and not the one I thought I was going to take.
Well, we can't thank you enough for being here today. I'm telling you, Carolyn, you have really had so much success and you have so much to share, and you've done so generously with us today with the Writers Club. We, as the Public Queens Book Club Reading Nation, thank you. And we got to get some more stories. I'm dying to know when those new books are going to come out, and then I've got to get to reading this latest one. Have you sent Mandy and I a copy of your latest book? I don't know. If we,
Bones, I think y'all got.
yeah.
Yes, I got mine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know,
Hey, Carolyn, do you have anything that you'd want to submit for the work in progress, the anthology we're doing? And it could be pulled from something that you worked on in the past, you know that.
doesn't have to be anything new.
Something from Touched, I think, but I'll go back and see if the email is sitting in the dead.
Okay, well then
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, because I want to reissue it. And I think that
That would be perfect.
I'm gonna send an email.
if I didn't send it, I will send it.
Well, and it might
And
have,
then
'cause I
be
did
sure
get-
to tell her, you haven't submitted she hasn't submitted a story from her dog or animal's horse perspective yet, has she? You know, we're doing a feature in our Reading Nation magazine now where it started with Robert Gwaltney having his dog telling the story of his life. With Robert, it's hysterical. But we're always looking for stories from the animal's point of view, not an interview,
Right.
just an animal
Yeah, if our pets
reporting
could talk.
from where they live. If our pets could talk. And I'm telling you, most authors are pet crazy. And most readers have a pet. So it's just like a given.
Well, I have the Black Cat series that I publish where Trouble thinks. He doesn't talk, but he thinks. And he is so much smarter than the bipeds, as he calls them.
Yeah,
So,
Bipeds. Oh my God. You should
Is it something in,
take something from there.
from Trouble. Put in if our pets could talk.
I will. I will.
I love that
Sweet.
name. I'm house sitting my grand cat, Luna, as my daughter's in transition of moving. And this little cat is so different from my other cats. They're all so different, but Luna is, I don't know, she acts like she's never eaten until she got to my house, and now she waddles. And I go, man, you got to run outside there, girl. When your mama sees your little backside, she's going to go, what are you feeding my cat? But it's just, animals are just, you know.
They are. I have now 15 cats. When my brother passed away, I took his 6 feral cats. They're all in the house. And I have this one orange Manx cat that every time I look at him, he hisses at me. And if I reach down to try to pet him, he will swat the snot out of me. But when I'm opening cans of cat food for 15 cats, it's like mayhem. So I'm opening the cans and I'm
Yeah.
bowls, and I'm working as fast as I can. And that little devil will sneak up and bite me on the calf. Like, work faster.
Sure. What's his name?
His name is Apollo.
Apollo. Come on, Apollo.
Okay. But I got him today. I was feeding him this morning, and he forgot to be spooky. So he's eating right at my feet. And I bent down and started petting him. He actually purred. So we had a breakthrough this morning.
Aw.
How sweet. Well, I had a cat that lived in my house for 4 years before it ever let me touch it.
It happened.
And now it sleeps on my head every night. Yeah, so. Farrellina is its name.
Carolyn. That's so
It's Farrell.
My little sister had a cat named Bitey, and it was named Bitey for a reason. And I'd go over to her house, and it would be like, I would like knock on the door and open it up, and I'd be like, where's Bitey? Like, where is the cat? Because, you know, most cats would run, and, you know, if they don't like people, they'll, you know,
Run
I
at
wouldn't
you.
mess with, I respected every, you know, space. No, he would be like, jump on you like a dog, and it's like, he'd tiptoe in to the living room, sit on the couch and just wait for it. Just wait.
I gotta say, I have 7 dogs and 15 cats in this house.
Dang,
Where
I
are
love it.
they? Where
Not
are
her.
they?
There's on the floor here. There's 3 dogs around my feet. They're on all the furniture. They own the furniture. There's a cat here, 2 cats out in the sunroom. They're everywhere, but they're pretty quiet and well behaved. They really are.
They really are.
Until
I mean, 'cause for this whole time, I can't believe that my little 3 didn't bark, but I mean, they're pretty good, but they're terrors.
They are terrorists.
Well, I love that, you know, you have all these little animals and your house looks that great. I'm impressed. Hey, my sister had 27 at one time and they were in the house. Victorian house. I go, you're the crazy Victorian cat lady, but she's OCD. So if you go in her house, you would never know she had a cat. I go, how do you do that? She cleans constantly, but she owns a restaurant and you can eat off the floor. She's so particular about everything.
You know, I'll be happy when I have a rule here. When the cats come to me, when I call them and I can pick them up, just in case they get hurt.
Yeah.
I'd have to be able to get them to the vet. I'd have to be able to catch them and get them to the vet. They can go outside in the daytime. They have to come in at night because of the, you know,
Animals.
the animals, dogs and coyotes and things roaming. But so I'm hoping that they graduate to where they want to be outside more. But right now they can't go anywhere because they won't come when I call them.
Yeah. Well, you take care with those animals, and we are excited about your up and coming publications, your books, and we know you're going to be a part of everything that we do. We love you, Carolyn.
Oh,
We
I love y'all too.
lots of conversations about how great you are and how generous you are with everything that you've learned. And that's what the Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys Book Club is about, is inclusiveness and not being on a specific agenda other than that we all need to be on the same page that reading is important. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend and we'll be back in touch.
Thank you very much, both of y'all.
Bye. I'm glad it all worked out with the internet. So I'll be posting this soon. I got it all recorded. So turning you off for now. Happy reading. And it's all about the story. This time, Carolyn Haines. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.